This lecture covers the topic, the ratification debate and the origin of the Bill of Rights. And the focus question is, how did anti-federalist concerns raised during the ratification process lead to the creation of the Bill of Rights? Even though the Constitution provided that it would go into effect when 9 states had approved it, not all 13 states as the Articles of Confederation required, ratification was still not certain. Each state held an election for delegates to a special statewide ratifying convention, and these elections generated intense activity. Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay authored a series of 85 essays that appeared as The Federalist in 1788. These three argued that the Constitution did not endanger Americans' liberties, it actually protected them. Madison, especially in essays numbers 10 and 51, developed a new vision of the relationship between government and society in the United States. Madison identified the basic dilemma of the new republic. Government must be based on the will of the people, but the people were susceptible to dangerous opinions, especially those that might threaten property rights. He worried that a growing number of poor in the future might use their political power to secure a more equal distribution of wealth. The solution for Madison was to be found in the republic's size and diversity. Previous republics had always been small in size, but the size of America, he argued, would stabilize, not weaken its government. In a nation so large, so many distinct interests would develop that no single interest would ever be able to take over the government and dominate the others. Every majority would be a coalition of minorities, securing the rights of individuals. Madison reassured Americans that they had only to extend the sphere to ensure the republic's perpetuation under the Constitution. Madison thus strengthened the idea that westward expansion was essential to American freedom, made the structure of government and its size, not its virtue, the basis of republicanism, and advanced the liberal notion that men are motivated by self-interest and that social good emerges from conflict between private interests. Those opposing ratification, called Anti Federalists, believed that the Constitution favored power more than liberty. They were poorly organized and included many of the farmers who sought economic relief in the 1780s. The Anti Federalists predicted that the new government would be controlled by merchants, creditors, and others hostile to the interests of ordinary Americans. They believed that only a small republic could succeed, not an expansive republic, as Madison argued. Liberty was the watchword of Anti-Federalists, and they charged that the Constitution did not protect individual rights such as trial by jury or freedom of speech and the press as the state constitutions did. Pro-Constitution politics prevailed in cities and rural areas integrated into the commercial marketplace. Its strongest supporters were men of great wealth, but the promise of prosperity also appealed to urban artisans, laborers, and sailors who thought a stronger central government would revive a lagging economy. Anti-federalism found most of its support in rural and frontier areas populated by struggling farmers. Ultimately, the pro-constitutionalist energy, organization, and command of the press prevailed. Madison won support for the Constitution by promising that the first Congress would enact a Bill of Rights. Although many people in Massachusetts, New York, and Virginia opposed the document, only Rhode Island and North Carolina voted against ratification. The individual rights that are today protected by the Constitution and celebrated by Americans were not actually in the original document ratified in 1788. Madison had promised that Congress would pass a Bill of Rights in order to gain support for ratification, but he believed that such a bill was redundant and would not prevent majorities from violating constitutional rights in the future. But each new state constitution had a Bill of Rights. Madison presented a series of amendments that became the basis for the Bill of Rights ratified by the states in 1791. They included the First Amendment, prohibiting Congress from legislating about religion and protecting freedom of the press and assembly. The Second, upholding the right to bear arms and organize militias, and other amendments affirming the right to trial by jury and prohibiting abuses such as arrests without warrants and forcing a person accused of a crime to testify against himself. The Ninth declared that rights not specifically mentioned in the Constitution were retained by the people, opening the door to establish new rights not articulated in the text. The 10th Amendment affirmed that powers not delegated to the national government or prohibited to the states were reserved to the states, protecting states against encroaching federal power. The Bill of Rights showed how the Revolution had changed America. Most remarkably, the Constitution recognized religious freedom. The Constitution, unlike the Declaration of Independence, is entirely secular. It does not refer to God, and it bars religious tests for federal office holders. The First Amendment prohibits Congress from legislating on religious matters, a departure from colonial and British precedent.